Oh, for real? Oh no, my fucking laptop died on me just now. Shit. Oh, it became unplugged when I moved it. Oh, fuck. That sucks. Damn. Now if I want to mine Monero on that laptop in the middle of the stream, I have to reboot it and have to do all that shit again. I don't feel like doing that right now. God damn it. Son of a bitch. Alright, well. Welcome to the dojo. We're dealing with shit all the time over here. I want to work on my game. At the end of last stream, which was a long stream, I began dealing with a very big issue. The size of my dungeons could not be very big under the old way of doing things. 32 by 32 felt okay enough, but at 64 by 64, you know, if you're dealing with a 64 by 64, I suck at math in my head. It's only 4096 different tiles, right? And if we wanted to do a 128 by 128, it's 16,000 tiles. And if we want to do a 256 by 256, 65536. These are, for anyone who's wizened in computer science knows that these are powers of 2, and so these have to do with a relationship between the size of bytes and bits and size of data types like integer and long. And it really gets to a question of how much shit can we like shove into the CPU cache at a given moment, right? It's like, how many things can we do per, you know, like per second? Oh, you. This is my processor. It's a 12th generation Intel Core i5-12400. It's got 12 real cores. None of this fake P-core, E-core bullshit. And it's damn near 4 gigahertz. Real fucking close to 4 gigahertz in speed. The cache size is actually pretty big. It's like 18 fucking megabytes. And I'm not sure if the cache size is per core or if that's for the total CPU. But 18 megabytes is a lot to work with. You know, I think if you were to do some of that quick math again, right? And we said 256 by 256, right? So there's 8 bits in a byte, and you got like 65536 integers, and each integer is approximately, you know, if we wanted to get, you know, measure on the long end of the stick, you say they're all long integers, right? And then compare that number against 18 megabytes. So 1024 is a kilobyte times 1024 is a megabyte times 18. And so that's a significantly bigger number, which means that in theory, you know, we should be able to shove a a dungeon into that space, right? The idea is we want to keep everything in the CPU cache so that everything is like rendering and running like really fast. I'm convinced that one of the big reasons for the slowdown in frame draws at such a, what I would describe as small area, has to do with how much data is actually being stored per tile. You know, like with Minecraft, there's not necessarily like all of this extra info that I'm storing or is being stored in a certain space. The reason it's so fast is because of the way that the data is arranged. And that's effectively what I want to do today, is rearrange some data. I also want to use some Deepseek to help out where possible. But in the current moment, what I'm doing, I'll show you. So with dungeon tiles, I have eliminated the entities vector, which is a major step forward. And so what we're going to end up using on a per tile basis is kind of what we have here. You know, we have no dynamic data structures on the tile itself anymore. And so we could probably start stripping away some of this extra cruft that might be contributing towards that slowdown. So if we actually consider, like, I was kind of like lowballing the size requirement, right? But like 4, 8, 12, 16. As if every entity ID is an int, or it's an 8, 16, 24, 32. Plus the space necessary for these, right? Tile type being a enum, that's an int. ID, that's an int. So we got 2 more ints, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which could be a single char. So we've got 40, maybe like less than 64 bytes per tile, right? What did we say? 18 times a kilobyte times a megabyte. So if that's 18, but you know, if that's 18 megabytes, and we said, like, you know, the size for a tile should be about 64, and we have the ability to inline this in memory. So if we had a 256 by 256, that's still significantly smaller than 18 megabytes, right? Which is a good thing. So one of the other reasons too that I believe that things are being kind of slow is because of the way that we're storing that tile information. We're having to do this lookup on a per tile basis. So instead of just stepping through like a grid, which was originally how I was writing it a long time ago, instead of just stepping through that grid, and I thought this was an optimization back then, we instead store a list of tiles, and then we have a tile ID for each one of those tiles, kind of similar to how we're actually storing the entities and handling them. But I'm assuming that this extra computation step is also contributing towards slowdown because it's having to continuously compute a cache because it's unordered. And we tried actually changing this to like regular map the other day, and it was like slow. So that's the thing too. Damn, we got a lot of viewers right away. Holy shit. Why are you coding games, dog. Please don't assume what I'm doing. That's the whole cast size for each core. So yeah, I am checking the chat. You have to wait for me to get back to it. Like, I don't have the shit on the same screen. Pop out chat. Okay. Let me put this on top. Always on top. There we go. Okay. Is this shit pre-recorded? No, it's not pre-recorded. Make your file names consistent. I misunderstand cache. Yeah, you should shove something in cache, but your whole operating system is running, and yeah, and the OS is not loading your whole dungeon. But the OS is loading my whole dungeon. I mean, I even write code to do it, so you'll just have to sit back and see. And yes, I am checking chat, so just give me time, all right? Like, I'm doing stuff. I only got so many eyeballs and so many monitors. Anyway. That's one of the things that we're doing, is that we're getting around to that. But in the process of me doing this off stream the other day, I ended up there's a small display bug with there's actually a display bug and a movement bug that we're gonna have to tackle first before we can kind of like push onwards into this optimization. Well, loads it from RAM, I think you mean. Like, my dungeon's actually not on disk. Unless you mean the code. I mean, the code's on disk, but each dungeon is effectively procedurally generated. So there is no asset loading. So if you're making some sort of assumption about how I'm doing this, yeah, while it's just like a big square, like a big rectangle room at the moment, I do have code for procedural map maze generation and randomization and stuff. In fact, the ordering of the tiles is actually random on every single compilation and run. In addition to that, so is the location that the player actually shows up in. So I'll show you what that's like. Well, no, because every single frame, like a lot of this code is written on a per frame draw basis. There's kind of this separation of the logic of handling each turn in the actual rules of the game versus the 60 frames per second that I'm aiming for. That's the whole reason that we're trying to optimize this. So one of the reasons that I don't look at chat as often is because I actually want to make progress, and looking at chat can be very distracting. So if you want me to look at chat, please give me like 5-minute intervals or something like that in order to actually make progress on the project, so that I am just not constantly being distracted. Because if the goal is to distract me from making progress, you're not going to win, all right? This game is being made whether you fucking like it or not. Now, that said, if you think that your comments are so important that I have to read the chat, maybe you should consider subscribing, liking the stream, and actually sending a super chat, perhaps. So just check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right. Just want everyone to understand that before we continue. Viewers need to understand their role and their place in the streaming relationship, and a lot of times people don't do that. In fact, I don't receive nearly enough donations for that kind of thing to be a thing. You know, I'm not Asmongold. I'm not some like React streamer. I'm not that kind of shit, all right? I'm a 40-year-old fucking man, and I'm trying to make a really good game here. But first things first, we have to optimize the code. And we can't do that if you're constantly yip-yapping about stuff or just like expecting me to look. Now, notice that I'm in a different location. Notice that everything is totally different. And so when we actually generate the big structure and it's sitting in RAM, it's going to load parts of it from RAM. But at the same time, the code is written in a way where we do want to render the entire fucking dungeon floor every single frame. All right? Because every turn, something happens. Something could change. And I'm actually doing caching of a lot of things that y'all can't see here already by drawing to different textures and then checking to see if the frame is dirty or if that we need to actually redraw the entire scene. And so this way, there is kind of a relationship between the number of times that we actually update frames and how many times we end up having to actually draw them. Because in reality, because of the frame rate, there might actually only be, like, depending upon if you're, for instance, moving the camera. So moving the camera would actually trigger an increase in updates. And you can actually see that when I'm moving the camera. If you take a look in the debug panel right above where my finger is, and you see the line that says update, next to it, it's like Evil Dojo 666, Project RPG, frame, and then update. All right. Notice that the number of updates significantly less than the current frame number, right? Now watch what happens when I move the camera. All of a sudden, the number of updates is going up significantly, and that's because as the camera increments, we mark the frame as dirty, and so we end up having to redraw the entire scene. That way, we're able to kind of maintain this direct relationship between what the user is doing and what the current scene actually looks like. I don't want there to be any lag from point A to point B, if that makes sense. Well, you don't need to try and help me understand how cache works, because I understand how cache works, and it's very rude of you to assume that I don't. Know your fucking place. I'm not going to disable chat. I am going to put you in timeout for 24 hours, though. Like, you are actually spamming chat. Like, you are single-handedly, like, the biggest spam chatter. You need to check your assumptions about your place in the cosmos. You know, if you want to talk shit, maybe start your own stream. But this is not the place to do it. Like I said, I'm trying to get stuff done. And if you're over there yip-yapping, it's very distracting. I appreciate comments on the stream. I do not appreciate someone coming in and making assumptions about what I do and do not know or understand. Or that my process is not valid, or that I'm not going to figure it out without your help. Like, your help is not so fucking magical that it's going to solve all my problems. And if it were, maybe you should charge me money. You know, why are you going to come in and try to give stuff away for free? You know, like, we all got to eat. We all got bills. Why is your time so worthless as to come into my chat and try to tell me, who is here to teach you things? You know, you see what I'm saying? Like, you're trying to teach the teacher, you know, and it's not going to work. Now, anyways, back to fucking people, man. Nikita Ed. Then don't stream. Maybe don't chat. Maybe think before you type. what are we doing here? All right. Like I said, there's two major bugs that I have to fix before we can actually continue progress. One of them, if you didn't notice, is that our dude is invisible. Now, something interesting too, the other bug is that not only is the dude invisible, but you can see that, you know, based off the cursor moving in random positions, he's still attempting to move. But the logic for movement has now been broken since I removed the entities vector. So the first two steps in this progress, or in this process, are going to be fix those two bugs. We have to get the display working correctly for drawing tiles. And then we have to get movement working again correctly. So one question I have is about code font size, because I want to code at a size that's comfortable for you to read and comfortable for me to write. And I'm not sure what the best typically is, but it's usually on the larger end of the spectrum. Is this large enough text for y'all? Is this large enough text? I don't know. Someone tell me. Can't believe we've gotten this many views this quickly. Holy shit. Guess people really like this game dev stuff. That's why I need to keep doing it. Well, that's not the only reason why, really, but... Oh yeah, I saw Nada FBI Honeypot up in the chat. What you doing up this early, man? Real Gamer HRs. Real Gamer Hours. HR in Monster Hunter stood for Hunter Rank. My God, I sunk a lot of time into that game. Holy shit. It's a good game, though. It's real fun and addictive. And one of the better multiplayer online RPGs that I've ever played. Action game, too. Really solid. Very hard to find things wrong with that game. I mean, it's come a long way as a series. And a long time ago when I first heard of it, acknowledged and knew based off the way it was written about that it was probably a very hardcore game. I never got around the chance to playing it until the Nintendo Wii U with Monster Hunter 3U. And between 3U, Worlds, and Wilds, I have sunk easily well over 1,000 hours. It's one of my favorite video games, and I might even play some later tonight just because I haven't played Wilds in a long time. Still got this PS5 behind me that I hardly never use. And not to mention, I still got to play that Final Fantasy VII remake. So, you know, that original FF7 is one of the reasons it's like OG PlayStation 1 state-of-the-art technology type shit. Took 4 fucking years for that game to get made. Ends up making, you know, costing millions of dollars. One of the biggest budget titles at the time. Ends up absolutely outperforming like most of Square's other properties. To a point where it's one of the first games in its archives to be like straight up remade, reimagined, reinvested in. At the same time, there's kind of a reason for that. One of the things that kind of drove them in that direction, I feel like, is a number of failed experiments between the release of Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1 and the release on the PlayStation 5. Somewhere along the way, I mean, there was a number of different management missteps for the company where they lost a lot of money. And like, as an example of this, when Final Fantasy The Spirits Within came out, which was a movie, and for its time also state-of-the-art like CG graphics, really good movie, but it was a totally separate like Final Fantasy plot point, and I think a lot of people wanted Final Fantasy and not some like alter OVA type shit that was like not even connected to any of the previous games. I think, you know, like they actually lost money on the development and release of that movie, which prompted them to re-release Chrono Trigger on the PlayStation 1 in the United States. I know my JRPG history. Like nobody can say that I haven't paid attention to the sands of time as they get blown out by the winds of history. Yeah. Now, I was talking about the 2 bugs we gotta fix, right? There's a display bug, which may be the easiest to kind of tackle first. Then draw a dungeon floor. A lot of this is probably going to change like real shortly, right? At the moment, we don't have any doors or props that we need to draw. And clearly the target box drawing is working properly, right? We're not rendering any spells or using spells at all at the moment. I'm not placing any boxes. I mean, we potentially could have items, although I don't remember if I'm like actually spawning them or not. Yeah, I am. I am spawning a weapon and a shield. So we'll leave that. There technically are no dead NPCs at the moment because we're not rendering anybody other than the player, and there's no way for him to die. So item, NPC, and player. So actually we could technically comment these out. Now between these two function calls, we have a lot of stuff in here. That's because of reactions like that. Someone in chat says, bro, why use Neovim for vibecoding? And people will probably say, oh, you're not vibecoding correctly. First of all, good job clicking. Secondly, where needed, we will be using aider. Right? You say why? Um, so we're prepping right now, right? Like if we're going to do any sort of vibe coding, we have to prep. You can't just run up in there with a 9,000 line code base and expect it not to like fuck the absolute shit out of it up. However, I have had recent success getting it to do certain things where I needed it because it was really annoying to, like, for instance, write pathfinding code. I actually got it to like pretty much one-shot that shit. Pretty happy with that result. But I had to make space. You know what I mean? I had to paw away at dirty ass parts of my code base in order to make that shit work. Or basically give the LLM a place to actually do stuff. It is possible. It's like, why? What? Yeah, Copilot. GitHub Copilot is fucking great. I used that for like several years. I had a pro account for like a year, and it was great. Like, you know, if I ever get another $100 or whatever for it, like, I would totally consider using that again because it was great. Very fast, generally useful, but I also figured out that the best way to use Copilot was to turn it off, then turn it back on whenever you actually needed it. Neovim's great. I love Neovim, dude. I love terminals in general. I like doing stuff in this space. Look at it. It's a whole screen of code. Nothing else getting in my way, right? And it's all custom. You know, you can tweak the shit out of whatever you want and make it cool. Unlike VS Code. In VS Code, people just like default with like so little code space. And then whenever I want to zoom in and like make everything bigger like this in Visual Studio Code, as a result, not only, I mean, you get bigger text, right? But not only that, you actually end up losing coding space because every other UI element decides to get bigger alongside your code. And it's like, no, that's not what I fucking want. I just want the font, right? Like in my code space, like in that little block that your code fucking sits in. You know, it's like, oh, well, you can just go here and here to like change the font. It's like, how many clicks do I got to go to change my goddamn fucking font size in my fucking code editor? Jesus. Fuck. Goddamn, I hate Visual Studio Code. Goddamn, I hate fucking Electron apps. Goddamn, I hate bad UI. All right, so draw dungeon floor entity type, right? Oh, you know what we are missing? I know exactly what we're missing. I think. Actually, yeah, you were mentioning KC Muratori and a particular video. I actually wrote it down on like actual physical paper during the stream the other day, and somewhere around here I can find it. Yeah, becoming an N+2 programmer. That's the video you told me about, right? Like, I straight up wrote it down, like right here, like. Keep it real. You know, honestly, the thing with memory optimization and optimization in general is that really, to make something truly optimized, you got to kind of design it that way out of the box from the beginning, which is one of the reasons that I have ended up throwing away code bases year after year so many times, is that I usually am able to succeed to a point where I run into some unanticipated issue that ends up kind of becoming a blocker of progress. The original blocker for this was the design and development of my component system. Once I overcame that, the next big blocker is really kind of here. I'll make it a point. Maybe I can like actually watch and comment it or comment on it. Like I'm a big fan of the stand-up. I like that group of programmers. They seem like, you know, a real fun group of people. It's one of the, if there is a thing I miss about working in an office environment, is actually being surrounded by smarter people than myself. Because it's really in those spaces that you can grow the most as a developer and as a person. Is, you know, like for most of my life, I was kind of the computer guy. And it's like, how am I ever going to be able to tell these people that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing? And I'm just figuring shit out as I go. You do that for a number of years, you kind of get good at it, and you kind of, you know, become a general person capable of solving a number of different problems on the fly. But at the same time, there's a lot of different ways of thinking about things, and there's a lot of different angles that you as a person may not have been privy or exposed to. As an example of this, when I did work in corporate the first time, one of my immediate coworkers, you know, like told me about his programmer history, and he was basically raised on Macintosh from like childhood, never once touched a Windows machine in his life, pretty much, and basically like mainlined, you know, his programmer life up to iOS development, and eventually started a company with a couple other people, and you know, very different from my own experience. Like, I somehow got into iOS development because someone wanted to pay me to do it. And prior to 2010, prior to 2011, I had no iOS development experience at all whatsoever. I had no MVC, model view controller knowledge. I had no proper engineering background. All I had was a university education with no paper diploma, which later came a couple years later, but that's another story. Yeah, there is like a really strong benefit to having like worked out things like on paper all the way up to the very end. But for the scope of a game like this, with so many different moving parts, it's really become difficult for me to anticipate what is or is not going to work out. And up until now, like I've been successfully slapping things together and making things kind of push forward. But it's also becoming more and more apparent that as the game like scope grows, that there's going to be these additional subsystems that I'm gonna have to build. As an example of this, like a proper event system in order to manage like emergent behavior as a result of like doing certain things. Like, as an example, pushing a box onto a button that's on the floor, and that button on the floor, when activated, opens like a door, and when that door opens, maybe a monster steps out, or maybe some water flies out, or something else. And it's kind of like a Rube, what's the name of that machine? A Rube Goldberg machine? A Rube Goldberg, yeah. So, like, that's kind of one of the appeals, right, of building systems like this, is that you get this cascading effect of things that happen from like one single decision over here ends up having like large numbers of impacts. That's one of the reasons I like dungeon crawlers. It's one of the reasons I like thinking through these kinds of systems, is figuring out how can we best articulate this kind of management, right? So back to solving this bug. The reason that cast live NPC is probably not hitting for the player, right, is we actually have player down here, but up here in the draw entity type, we could try doing this, because let's see. I mean, obviously on its own, at the moment, this is not going to work, but we're going to try something as an experiment. Because the player is often treated as an NPC, even though its type is not NPC. But the reason I did this is a distinction, but even that sort of thing, we might need to consider maybe eliminating the entity player type so that the player is effectively replaced as an actual NPC, and then use some other mechanism to like determine which player or who the player actually controls. And even then, it's probably the hero ID is probably the best way to do this, because we do assign a global hero ID at creation. So this is kind of like a little bit of a hack. Oh. Okay, I'll have to fix that. Draw dungeon floor. Line 361. Oh, hell yeah. No, I'm stealing that idea. I've heard of Caves of Cud. I have not gotten around to playing it yet, unfortunately. I think it would be fun to give that game a try sometime. Yeah, like definitely a big inspiration for this game is NetHack. When I was in college in like 2004 to 2006, when I took operating system class, I played a lot of NetHack in that class. Now you gotta remember that this was an era when I had access to a Nintendo Wii. The Wii was still, like, the Wii was huge in college. Holy fuck. I actually waited outside of a GameStop on Black Friday at Wii launch, and I actually have, somewhere around here, a launch Wii from 2007. And it's hacked, it's jailbroken, and it's fun times, man. It still works. I could plug that shit in now and play it. I actually have played it within the last few years. One of the best investments. Nintendium. I don't know if it's still a thing, but it was real back then. It was real in my childhood too. So one of the mechanics with NetHack that was always really intriguing is the Zorn, right? The Zorn is a monster that can eat metal, and whenever it eats metal, it kind of adopts the properties that are attached to the metal, and you could do this to like permanently gain like magical attributes. So as an example, if you find a ring of invisibility and you are able to become a Zorn somehow, like for instance through a wand of polymorph, you could eat the ring of invisibility and then become permanently invisible. Little things like that. Very intriguing, emergent behavior that, I think in the best case can create for very interesting stories and bring people back to continue playing something. Also definitely useful in modeling real world events, things that could happen in real life. Oh yeah, so we got rid of dead check. Okay, so one of the problems here is that when we're placing this dude down on the tile, we can't really tell what can't we really tell? So with dungeon tile, there's these 4 different values. Oh, and cast player present. That should actually be probably what we're using here. Oh, whoops. Okay, nothing yet. What I'm thinking is really happening here isn't no longer in this part of the code, but it's going to be in the logic. Although, create player at with calls create NPC at with. df add at, just one of the functions that I kind of been tweaking through. Calls tile add at with ID and type. But we are adding it with NPC, and so it's never being correctly set that we're actually adding the player and not an NPC. So this is an example of something kind of interesting that I didn't anticipate to run into. So we actually go through the process of creating an NPC at that location. First, before we mark that it's actually the player. So immediately after we do that, we should probably find a way to update the tile information. So wait. Because Deepseek is cheap and inexpensive. And for how little you have to pay, it's very fucking good. Because I'm broke bitch boy over here and I don't have the money for like full auto Claude Code type shit. If I were, this would be a very different type of stream. Create player at with get the tile at a certain location. Now we have, oops, we have a tile add over here that this is the whole reason we're compensating for this, right? So tile set cached player present true. And then live NPC. Let's see if that had any impact. Oh man, I saw a glimmer of him like fading in, but I think something that's happening, and I probably should actually get rid of the fade in, fade out while I'm debugging this stuff. Update player state. For see, did we comment out the weapons? Yeah, we did. So technically we could omit that call too. Player NPC. Technically don't have any NPCs at the moment. think we're going to omit texture alpha. It shouldn't be a component anyway. Oh, bless me. So it's really all in the game state, and then draw entity sprite. Oh, I forgot I got this entity border function I can be using too. Oh, that's probably why that was happening. Oh, okay. Oh. There we go. Uh-oh. He disappeared. He was there for a moment. Curious what's going on there. As soon as he changes direction. Uh-oh. Probably time for us to take a little breaky poo. My doggy's gotta go out. But we are just really getting started here. It's just about 3:20 p.m. Central Texas Standard Time. I don't know if we're in daylight savings time or not. What do we do for like a spring forward next month? Fuck. Not looking forward to that. All right. So we could leave this up for a moment. And I got some music for y'all. Actually, we'll set it up in test play mode. No specific title. It's something from Suno AI that I created. I've got a lot of tracks like that. So if you like that, I will get some stuff uploaded. But the title of the track is Indian Music Experiment 1, Track 1. That's the name of the music. Not exactly anything that you can just look up. That's all I'm saying. Okay. All right, so one of the okay, so we actually we managed to solve the first problem. Actually getting the player to display again. The one thing to check is whether or not the animation was working properly for the idle state. To test that, all we have to do is run the game and not move and just watch the animation. Oh wait, we have to turn off test mode first. It looked like it works. Okay, so it is working correctly here. But as soon as I move, he's disappearing for some reason. And I'm not sure yet why. Watch. And he's gone. And not to mention, not only is he gone, but the red box that was surrounding him is not being drawn anymore either. So this gives us a little bit of a clue as to where we're having an issue. I just gave some love to my animals. All right. Place bets. How hard is this going to be for me to solve? And will I need Deepseek? Question. It is a question. That is a fact. draw entity sprite. No, I think I know what's going on. I think it's mismanagement of the cache variables on the tile. Because my gut is actually telling me that there's a problem with the logic. First of all, we already know that there's logic with the movement by virtue of the fact that in test mode, he's attempting to change directions and his position's not being properly updated. What I'm thinking happening is that we're setting or unsetting some other variable in that first initial move, and a way to test this is when I start up the game without test mode, right? We just play the game or run the game normally. What I'm thinking is happening. Man, my English is fucked. That's what I get for studying so many different foreign languages side by side with my mother tongue. So what I can do to test this is, instead of actually moving in a different direction, we instead change direction without moving. So you see, dude's currently pointed at the down right square here. If I press numpad key 5, and then I press 6. Oh wait, hold on. I forgot to turn off my my keyboard mouse. Okay, so pressing numpad key 5. Notice that it just got brighter. Now I'm gonna press 6. Now I'm gonna press numpad key 5, and then I'm gonna press 9. Okay, so the bug, I am now very convinced the bug exists in the movement and not in anything else. By virtue of the fact that I can get this dude to spin around in place and he properly animates for every single one of those states, now I'm convinced that the bug's actually in the movement, and that makes sense because the crux of moving between tiles initially was this idea that if every tile has a bucket called a vector, and moving between tiles means removing an item from one vector and then putting it to another. And now we no longer have those vectors because we're trying to optimize for just going fast, right? In order to go fast, we have to have less pointers and less memory access. So reducing the requirements of the dungeon and thus each individual tile being the primary goal here, right? So having verified this manually now, we can actually dig into the code. No, get SD. So in game state, in try entity move. This is a big magic function that does a lot of stuff. But in particular, it handles movement between tiles for an entity. Generally meant to be used by NPCs as well as boxes. And it ends up being used by boxes in the process of an NPC pushing a box. But you can see it's a big nasty function, right? This might actually be a good target for vibecoding. Now, someone expressed a very valid concern earlier. Bro, something, why you vote vibecoding games, dog? And it's like, no, I'm not vibe coding games. We're going to use LLM tools in software development, in engineering, in problem solving, right? It's a big, nasty function. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It's not very well commented. And during this moving process also, so we should really take a look at the output of the game whenever whenever movement is failing, right? I'll show you what that looks like. So I proved that, you know, the bug's not appearing until we actually move, right, or attempt to move. So as soon as I hit like left on the keyboard, the suit's going to disappear because something about the code in the movement is causing a misalignment effectively in the game state. So let's turn off the game window before I press that key, because we want to take a look at what's actually getting printed out by the debug console terminal on movement. You see a lot of stuff happen just now, and actually it is printing out a lot of stuff on a per frame basis, and we can kind of see that because it's just constantly spamming. So we can't really observe anything useful there, right? One thing that we could do is turn down our debug logging to level 1 and kind of like start stepping towards a more incremental feedback loop there. Failed to remove entity 1 at 4.4. Okay. Line 457. So the call to tile remove is failing for some reason. We no longer need a reset cache, because reset cache is actually probably breaking everything. We no longer need like a dirty entities. I don't think we're really using that anymore. Cached live NPC. Yeah, reset cache would have broken everything, so naturally that logic wouldn't have worked here. But then it checks to see if any one of the 4 values that we store on it are equal to the ID that we want to remove. And that way we don't have to think about like what type it is. We can just do it. And then hopefully that gets us past this if statement. So long as the ID that we remove is equal to the ID that we tell it to remove, then this won't trigger, and then we will return true for that. So this will come back as true. And then hopefully this will also solve the movement bug at the same time. 2 birds for 1 stone. That would be fun. That'd be fucking fun. Fuck. Okay, we're moving again. It's still very laggy, but we are moving again. I don't see why not. Although I'm not sure if Nightbot is gonna nuke it or not. I don't remember if I have link sharing turned on or not. Generally speaking, I discourage link sharing, but let me take a look real quick before you do that. I do have link sharing, although I am able to whitelist, but I wonder if I share a link. It'll do that. But anyway, I don't want to get too far. I'm losing momentum here. But no, yeah, I know it's been a couple days, but I've also, it's on my to-do list to watch that. But I'll tell you right now, though, if you push it really harder, I might be less inclined at this point. So just try to curb the enthusiasm a little bit. It's very easy to push me off of interest in things because I have a big backlog. I got there's so many good videos. There's so much good content in general, especially for programming nowadays. But shout outs to Casey Muratori for being boss mode level programmer, being ahead of the game. Some of us are just born earlier. And so we get a huge leg up. Okay. Now that we got it building again, or actually drawing. And now that we've checked that in, I think now it's going to be about dungeon floor optimization more than anything. It's probably possible that we could probably down convert this tile to a struct, and that might be less memory intensive in general. But at the same time, we would have to handle a lot of this stuff. But over in dungeon floor now, this is where we kind of want to start looking at getting rid of some of this stuff, right? So as an example, I'm going to get rid of dead NPCs. Just fucking nuke it. So some of these things we no longer need. I'm not going to manage a list of dead NPCs anymore. Let's see what breaks. Okay, so just one thing in game state on 2686. We may not even need the df call there, so we can get rid of that. Yeah, you know, and material like that really, it's not the kind of thing you want to rush through, and it's not the kind of thing that you really want to force someone to like go through. It's the kind of material that like should be gotten to on your own, kind of like Jesus. You know, like as a kid, I thought the idea of Jesus and all that stuff was real fucking stupid, and you know, like, it's where Evil Dojo came from, you know, 666, fucking hail Satan. But then, as I got older, as, you know, became wizened, and I actually had to go through real hardship and real trials and tribulations in life, and I really began to think about what God actually means to me, and what the relationship between the stories that we've been told about individuals like Christ throughout time relate to the everyday struggle of the common person. You know, it's something that you have to come to on your own. You can't tell a kid who's born in the first world how hard life is. It's something that they will eventually learn themselves in one way or another, and you can't, it's like, you know, you can try and do things to like kind of teach that to them or give them an insight that might be the case earlier rather than later, but at the same time, you can be too hard on someone, and you can also be too soft. You know, it's a very difficult thing as a teacher to figure out that perfect middle. But no, I believe you. I actually really do want to watch. I'm not fucking bullshit. I do want to watch that video at some point. It might be the kind of thing I could do reaction content to. But yeah, we're gonna push forward on this for a bit. Room metadatas I am not using at the moment, and so we should probably come back to it. The whole idea is that we wanted to have like more complicated information storing with this idea of what a room is and this idea of room metadata. So that way you can create very intricate dungeons that have certain information about certain rooms you might step into, for instance, like a dining room or a barracks or something. Instead of labeling like the whole zone, you could do something like that. Okay, so over in game state 392, setting rooms. So I actually don't need to do this here anymore. Okay, naturally not really a whole lot of movement there yet, but Now here's where the real fucked up shit is going to come into play, right? And this might actually be the best target for our vibe coding exploration today. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to figure out how to manage this shit myself. It's going to be a real big pain in the fucking ass. And it's going to take a long time. But effectively, we are crafting out this space, right? Where we isolate, we're like progressing up in the levels of design hierarchy. We started down with the dungeon tile. Now we're working on the dungeon floor. And I believe it's at this level where we're going to see performance gains by changing things. Probably too many shared pointers going on here. I don't know why I ended up doing things the way that I did, other than to solve problems and to get things to compile. But mapping tile ID to tile type pointer. So knowing that we have a tile type, and this is our tile, right? Whenever we go to like create or initialize the dungeon, we have this init function. So we create our tile map, and then we start adding tiles to our list of tiles, or rather tile IDs. We add tile IDs to our list of tile IDs, and then we create a tile. So every single one of these is potentially in different parts of memory. It's probably, you know, this is one of the more, it's like for every, if we're having to like calculate different memory locations for every single tile, then that's definitely going to fuck with like performance for a number of different reasons. I'm just thinking this out loud, like probably not saying anything that nobody doesn't know already. A lot of y'all are probably looking, man, this guy's fucking stupid. Look at his dumbass writing code by hand. All right. Fair enough. Oh, yeah. No, you want to try and block as many things up as possible so that you can batch process handling different elements. As an example of this, have you ever played this game called Noida? I haven't played it myself, but I watched a development video about it, and they have a very clever solution to handling such a dynamic falling sand simulator. One of the things they do is they do some serious parallel processing by assigning one core to each quadrant of your screen as far as rendering. No, I get it. I totally get it. You gotta understand, I've been programming for 30 years, but this is really more for like anyone watching or paying attention in the chat replay. Night Owl is talking about the best way to like level up to the next paradigm of programmer where you can really kind of squeeze performance out of your CPU and your programs when dealing with large numbers of elements, especially in performance critical applications like video games, as well as operating systems. Actually, have you ever heard of this book called The Black Book of Graphics Programming? It's really good. The Black Book of Graphics Programming has a section in it where they talk about naive search in like a text file, right? Basic, like looking for a string to see if it exists in a big block of text. And they talk about like how to like load or search through a large text file very quickly. And as it turns out, there's like a lot of really interesting, clever tricks that you can use to speed up that process and to effectively build a program that searches much faster than the default intuition otherwise would suggest you write the program. It's one of the reasons programming is so fun to me, is that finding solutions to these things is kind of like a puzzle, in that it's also kind of like Legos, that there's often more than one way to do something, but the better way to do something ends up sometimes being done in a way that's not immediately visually apparent. I like that. All right, so if we wanted to do something besides a tile map, right? All right, if we want to do something besides a shared pointer to an unordered map, I mean, the natural solution to this would be a grid, right? So one thing I'm going to do is, to start with, we're going to start by kind of hard coding things in to be like 64. naturally, all that stuff still works. Now remember, the whole deal here is we're trying to get rid of this tile map, right? So if every tile map is a just a bunch of pointers to tiles, why not we have all those tiles actually in one place? So actually, when we create the grid to begin, when the dungeon floor is initialized to begin with, every tile's already gotten a thing, so thanks, appreciate that. No, appreciate you coming down and joining. I'm gonna work for a little bit longer. I really want to push forward getting this situation resolved. Appreciate the support though. If you haven't done so, like and subscribe and all that stuff, man. It helps with the algorithm for sure. I've been getting a lot more attention in the streams than I have been previously. Even if there's not a lot of people watching right now, we have gotten some pretty strong attention over the last handful of streams. So appreciate everybody cheering me on as I work on this thing. Look forward to actually being able to play something a little bit more robust in the coming months. Right. here's going to be the tricky parts. Get rid of the tile map. And we're going to get rid of the vector of tile IDs. Alright, so this particular function needs like a whole ass rewrite, but we can kind of do something like Oh, this is not going to work. There we go. That'll work. So yeah, I wasn't actually thinking about things in terms of individual elements at first. I was actually thinking more in terms of scalability of creating the dungeons themselves. But now I see when it comes to actually processing these elements, this ends up not being the most effective pattern. So we're going to run into some bugs in this process, especially after getting rid of the primary way that like the renderer is going to be iterating through things in the dungeon. As you can see, draw dungeon floor. It's freaking out because we're no longer returning smart pointers with tile at. We're actually returning references. So for instance, in 324, for instance, v0 tile, now that draw dungeon floor 180. Yeah. Which, sorry, keybind for what? Like how I'm able to flip back and forth between things? Let me backspace. Let me undo. Yeah, okay. So you hit space Q to pull up your quick errors, right? This automatically gives me errors that might be thrown back from CLangD, which sits in the background, continuously checking to see if there's any errors in my open code. When there is, since I hit space Q, now the context is in the bottom terminal, or the bottom split. So hitting Control WW allows me to go back into the top one. If I do Control WW again, I'm now back in the list. If I had more than one, I'd be able to navigate up and down through these by using arrow keys. But because I only have one, I can hit enter and it'll jump to the line of code where I last had something. However, I'm going to redo this stuff just so I don't forget. Okay. Maybe we'll come up to some more errors and I'll show you. Yeah, we got plenty more errors we got to deal with. All right, so let's hop over to game state, line 3697. All right, so there, right? So from here, I've remapped my escape key to caps lock. It's easier to hit with the pinky. So you hit escape, otherwise known as caps lock. Now we're in normal mode in the terminal in a buffer. I can press space to pull up my list of open buffers. The immediate next file is game state, so I can hit enter, and now we're on game state. If I hit 1 capital G, we jump to the top of the file. If I hit space and Q, we get our big list of errors. If I press down arrow and hit enter, we're going to jump to the first error in the list. So this is a function that's supposed to return a shared pointer, but we're no longer doing that for the tiles. So what we're going to do is completely overhaul this one. It's now going to return a reference to a tile at a current floor at a current location. Get current floor, so the current floor is still a smart pointer, and that's okay probably for right now. But the tile itself is going to be returned as a reference. I hit space Q to update my warnings or my errors, and you can see that the one that we just did went away. If I jump to the next one, then we just immediately start writing and fixing the next one. I like this workflow a lot. It is very fast. It is, dare I say it, fun. So note that, like, for instance, this line, we're going to comment that out, change it to a reference. Notice the error goes away. The next error, only a few lines down, fix that one. Similarly here, so once I do a little block like that, I update the error list. We control WW. We hit enter. YY to yank. P to paste. D to go up. Because remember, I'm left-handed, right? The whole reason that I love this setup is because I got this fucking bum-ass dude over here that I've gone my entire life having to deal with the fact that I only got one fucking finger that I can type with. Alright? Like, all I want's... Like if there was one thing that I want, besides my mother to be alive again and not to have died of COVID-19, if there's one thing that I would absolutely kill for, if I knew that I could get it in this lifetime, like, I would straight up do this if I could get it, is the ability to type with 10 fingers. That would be so sick. Do you know how fast I would be flying if not for the fact that I only can type with 6? I mean, these guys are like fused, right? These guys are curled, locked at the knuckle. I can't extend them at all. This is something I have to deal with. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I didn't get here overnight. I've been programming and writing code for over 30 years, and I've been alive for over 40. But if there's one thing that I would absolutely kill for, is the ability to type with 10 fingers. I don't know if I'm ever going to get that. But I suppose a Neuralink chip would be the next best bet. Like if Elon ever hooked me up with a Neuralink, I would stop calling him a fake gamer. I'm just saying, yo. Like, if you out there listening now, on, like, I'll stop shit talking on your fucking Path of Exile 2 bullshit. Like, you would actually make up for a lot if you hooked me up with a Neuralink. I'm just saying. Anyway. Can't wait to get unbanned tomorrow. Looking forward to that. I'm gonna need some more coffee here soon. Okay, point being, to fix this error, like, it doesn't take many keystrokes. Bam, 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 bam. Like, you're done. Appreciate that, Lameless. I like your nick. I like your username. Thank you for joining. I've been doing this a long time. Not just, I mean, even today. Today's not, no, we haven't hardly gotten cranking. But this is starting to approach the kind of heavy duty, heavy lifting type work that I actually kind of like doing. Sometimes during the game development process, you don't always get the opportunity to overhaul infrastructure. Yeah, the subscriptions and the likes really help, man. I've been getting some pretty good algorithmic notice on YouTube lately, and I'm trying to keep things organic and find the right balance. Because I figure if I'm going to make a game, I might as well stream the process. Right? Like, I'm figuring a lot of stuff out on my own, and I'm trying to carve my own path, or as much of my own path as I can. Running out of game dev topics, dude. How is that even possible? What kind of game dev stuff are you interested in? Because, you know, one of my most popular videos is actually about getting started with 3D game dev in Raylib. Another one is actually exploring Raylib as a viable means for creating games. I don't really do a lot of 3D stuff myself. I wish I were a better 3D programmer at times, but from an artistic standpoint, I don't really think in 3D so much. A lot of my want as a programmer and designer ends up being in kind of a 2D type space, but that doesn't mean that I don't have like mad appreciation for 3D games. I play plenty of them myself. Find it hard to believe that you could run out of game dev topics to watch, though, especially when there's so many different ways to make games. Like listing, like if I were to like make a list, I'd have to do a whole video just on listing 3D Unity development, but as their whole market so far, it's not very. So why Unity over Unreal as an example, right? Like if you're to put Unity and Unreal side by side, what could we say about one or the other to make one or the other more or less appealing to someone who's trying to decide which one to even do or work with, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you just flip a coin, roll some dice, and then you're like, okay, well, we'll do that. But I'm often very interested in like reasons and workflow as to why to use a tool or one tool over another. You know, back when I first got aware of this kind of stuff, I was emulating a really ancient Japanese game. You could call it a game, but it was RPG Maker. Super Dante 1995 on the Super Famicom. That's kind of where a lot of the inspiration for this kind of stuff is kind of emerged from. I mean, one of the things with 3D is like to even be like a 3D designer. Yeah, I mean, you could spend like years on Blender alone. You know what I mean? It's like there's there's a lot of design, and there's a lot. You know, one of my biggest problems with 3D in particular is model clipping with the environment. You ever play some game and you're wearing like a cape? You got like a sword on, and the cape like wafts in and out of the fucking sword. I hate clipping. It's a hard problem to solve. Oh, I saw a message, but you removed it. I mean, clipping's been a problem since, like, Doom, right? Like, Unity's considered smaller? Interesting. That's the first time I've heard such a thing. I haven't really used Unity myself, but I have like issues with the way that they do things. In fact, I even gave a presentation here in town on doing game development without using Unity back in 2024 for the local gaming, I guess you could call it organization. Oh, no, don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Even still, that's kind of big. Like, even 5 or 11 gigabytes is kind of big. But I see what you're saying. There's different kinds of big. Oh damn, that's also a problem. I can see why that's annoying, especially if you want to keep your tools updated all the time. Having to like re-download a giant package just to get the next update, it's kind of annoying. So one reason I kind of like this type of setup is that you have a lot more direct control over the current version that you happen to be working with for whatever piece of thing you happen to be doing, no matter if you're doing game development or some other form of software development. Like, I'm real thankful that I got onto Linux as long ago as I did, because let's just face it, it's just way better than Windows for everything, especially programming and writing software. Anyone who argues otherwise, I just don't believe you. I don't believe that anyone who's actually had computer science education would, in their right mind, especially in the year of our Lord 2026, dare to suggest that there's anything positive about the Windows experience. Unless you're a red teamer, in which case they're probably really happy at how vulnerable everything has stayed over time. You have to excuse how ugly my code looks. Comments everywhere, just nasty. Get cached live in file manager takes that long. Why the fuck? Like, how did they break Windows that badly? See, I got started on Linux legit over 20 years ago. Straight up. And I'm real thankful that I watched this movie called Hackers when I was like 13. And so I had been aware, I had to wait like 5 years before I could actually use Linux for the first time. Like, in between me learning about like the fact that Unix and Linux existed and me actually getting to use it for the first time, 5 years. So imagine waiting for a video game to come out for 5 years, or like waiting for anything for 5 years, right? And you finally get to do it. It's like, I'm using this shit for the rest of my fucking life. I certainly didn't think that back then, but it's ended up what's happened. That's so crazy. The opening the file manager takes 5 minutes on Windows now. I haven't used Windows in a long time, so I can't really say, right? But it kills so much dev time for me because often I like closing my tabs, and sometimes it would just take half the time I'm developing just opening the file explorer. How many, well, geez, how many tabs do you open in your file explorer? That seems, personally, I don't even think Thunar has tabs, nor do I really, I mean, they might. I just don't really use them that often. A lot of the file manager stuff, a lot of managing my file system, I actually do straight up here in the terminal. And it kind of works out for me. So we got an interesting problem with this line. So we're actually, a lot of the code that we've had to fix, we've converted tiles from shared pointers over to references now. XPLR. Huh. Oh, is that? Oh, I thought you were in. Well, I can't tell if you're using the default. I mean, I thought we were talking about Windows, but I don't see why your stuff should be so slow on Linux. It sounds like there's something wrong there, though. I just noticed we're probably going to have to take a break here again to take my baby out. About my baby, I mean my elderly dog, who is my grandma's baby. But why? Okay, so what about your? Because like nothing on Linux should ever be that slow. So you're saying that your TUI file explorer takes 5 minutes to open up? That's crazy. I'm not sure what you're saying though. Sorry if I'm having trouble following along. Okay, so it's the Windows file manager that takes 5 minutes. Okay, that makes sense. Or as the kids like to say, that tracks. This will create an issue, I believe. All right, let's take a little break here. My dog's ready to go do some business. Do me a favor, guys, like and subscribe to stream if you haven't done so already. We will be back shortly. Sorry for the delay. It always takes me a long time to do stuff. And of course, I will have to step away again in about 45 minutes to feed my dog. She just got a snack, so did the cat. I got a real deep neck thing going on right now. I'm going to see if I can't try to work through it. It's really fucking with me, though. Someone said something in the chat, but it says message retracted. Why do people undo their chats? This is a... Once you send it, like, that shit's gone. I don't know. It's like, sure, built-in feature to the site. Whatever. I find the culture of the mental process. Because that technology did not exist up to a point, which indicates a certain age group. Because there is definitely this line of thinking where I'm old enough to remember before autosave in video games. Autosave is something that came like later. The history of save devices alone. I just realized that my microphone has been kind of cranked too low this whole time. My bad. Crank it up a little bit more. All right. My microphone has been really low. I'm surprised that y'all could even hear me. I wonder how the audio sounded. Shit. I gotta remember, it's like every time I end up unplugging my microphone, or like I'm in a Google meeting or some shit, something takes software control of my volume in my microphone. And we got viewers again. Damn. It's crazy. You cannot trust the analytics to save your life. It's just like, do whatever you're going to do and then look at stuff, because like trying to like directly engage constantly you know, it's like, I'll chat, but we gotta chat at my pace. Where did I leave off, Grace? Where did I leave off on the game? Oh, she's a good girl. Now, what's going to be really interesting is what happens during the rendering phase, because we have completely swapped data structures for the dungeon floor. We now have a hard-coded 64 by 64 array. Now, max draw time is a little bit lower. It's definitely a little bit lower. The fact that it draws at all is, like, the fact that this compiles and runs, but at the same time, I definitely question, like, how we're accessing things. So in order to kind of make this a little bit scalable, I'm going to have to kind of set it so that, like, whenever you instantiate a dungeon floor, its grid, which I don't believe we're using in some content. I don't know, like, I don't remember writing code. Man, maybe I moved so fast that I totally forgot, like, what I've done. This is also a problem with vibecoders, right? Like, so much code that you yourself didn't write, and you want to trust that the AI did it right. See how that's not like it becomes a cognitive burden, even to the human, to attempt to manage so much information after a certain point. Like, your system, like, your head can only have so many systems side by side at the same time. Something that goes wrong in one place can have a dramatic impact or be influenced by something else that's otherwise distant from it or appearing so. But okay, so the max draw time is 69, but that's still below 100. Remember, we're working with, like, single core, right? But this feels like a small improvement performance-wise. The real fun journey is going to be kind of digging into, like, what else needs to be done. Things that I have not yet kind of considered or foreseen. before we continue, of course, here's what my current thought is. Draw dungeon floor tile is like a critical function in that it's, you know, like all this stuff is called like once per frame at least, but draw dungeon floor tile, 64 times 64 tiles, this function gets called a lot. So performance of this function being very important because it's called by draw dungeon floor right here, and we're even attempting to kind of like unroll loops, right? Because now we're doing references. Instead of calling a function, we could actually just like what I mean is like the way that df tile at works, it returns this. So I wonder if like the fact that we're like I don't know that the compiler's smart enough, but this is kind of just like a formality in a way, right? So in the quest to eliminate like usage of things like this too, because you know with the idea of inlining, the intent was that like the compiled end result attempts to not cause lots of jump around during like code execution. You know, you want things to kind of be very predictable and just like going very procedurally and step by step, because yeah. Because now we have this performance issue. Whereas, you know, it's also a question of like what's going to be a realistic upper bound. How far can we push it? I've seen some people push some serious entity counts, and I've previously been able to animate like thousands of entities on the screen before. So very interesting that like with the way that the code has been structured since, even though like back then I swapped to C++ for easing the ability to like work with components, did not also have to like roll my own hash maps all the time. I thought this was a good decision, and it perhaps still is, but it's very interesting to be running into these issues. Literally this. Making the assumption that the width and the height are multiples of 4, which by my designs will be. And I'm only doing 4 here, technically could do it up to 8. So considering that, here, let's start by compiling. Oh, that's interesting. There's definitely a bug in the rendering. What's going on there? Oh, I'm not happy to see that. Oh, that's been since my update too, right? Oh, I know what happened. I'm silly. I'm stupid sometimes. Oh, that's not correct either. What am I doing wrong here? Let's go back to the old ways. There we go. Right, but the draw time when moving, zoomed in or zoomed out, you know, it's peaking like around 40, but we see a max of 53. And it's possible that just moving around ends up doing that sort of thing. So one thing to consider in draw, you know, like, is every iteration, even then, am I not using cam lock on anywhere? No. It's cam lock underscore on. No, I'm not. This function is useless. That can't be right. We have to be calling this somewhere. Oh, it's camera. God damn. Naming is so fucking important. The difference between cam underscore lock on, cam underscore lock underscore on, camera underscore lock underscore on, camera underscore lock on. So many different ways to write one thing that comes out of your mouth very naturally, but representing it in a string as a variable name in computer code. Explicitness is important. Why I did certain things a certain way, don't ask me. Okay, yeah, no, in camera lock on draw frame 2d.h. Right here, yeah, naturally. So actually this gets called like every frame. Why do we even need to access GRP here? Oh, because we're getting the sprite group of the hero, and wherever the hero is going to be drawn, we set the camera to target that entity. I suppose that makes sense. If the old target's not equal to the old target, or to the new target's x, or the old target's y, it's not equal to the camera's y, then we set the camera changed variable to be true, and the frame is dirty. Otherwise, the camera did not change. In all cases, the function successfully returns, in that, you know, is able to do something useful. When it returns false before that point, if there's some sort of setup error, which generally speaking, this doesn't really happen anymore, but it's still good practice. Verify that the hero ID exists in the sprite groups. If it doesn't, return false. If we are not doing camera lock on, return false. So as an interesting experiment, let's turn off camera lock on. let's see what the frame rate actually is when we do manual cameras and just like leave shit like static. Obviously, I would expect a small performance improvement. Uh-oh. Something has gone wrong here. Oh, you know what? I see. Okay, so the max draw time's a little bit lower. It still feels pretty slow though in general. Ideally, we would find a way to kind of optimize certain aspects of this, right? Hey, buddy. He's like, why is there stuff in my space? I'm trying to lay down, bro. Hey, don't play with that. Not to mention, there's also that warping kind of issue. I would prefer certain aspects. I can see a little bit of visual tearing almost. However, with camera lock on, it's really where I would prefer to start the game. Because I think it makes a lot more sense. Or you could set it to like do this once every so many frames perhaps. So vision and light radius, these are things that should be perhaps passed in since this is the only place where we're calling draw a dungeon floor, we can just pass them in. So switch over like that, easy enough. And even then, we can even go a level above that. Lib draw frame 2D. Lib draw to texture. I suppose the original intent with back propagating all these so we would do the lookup only once and then if we need to use it in multiple locations. So it'll be interesting kind of tracing it out. My cat is trying to get into the bathroom. Who's ready for din-din? Who's ready for din-din? Nano. Who's ready for din-din? What you gotta say to the world? So let me go. I want my food. It's coming, boy. You know, it's got like a few more minutes. It's pretty soon. We got automatic feeder. I call him Mr. Robot. I say, hey, Mr. Robot's got your food. I pass it off to him and he gives it to you. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So let me go. I want my food. He's purring very loudly right now. It's like, give me my motherfucking dinner. Alright, so in libdraw frame 2D, we're pulling these up, right? What if we pass them down? And then going a step further, or is this function called? In libdraw.h, we finally get to the top. Draw frame 2D to texture. It feels weird to actually pass in the light to this function this way, because there might not be, like, you might, well, I mean, no, I mean, this is actually specifically for the gameplay scene, so this is really where, like, decisions on how, there's center. This is really like where decisions on how a frame gets rendered get, you know, this is like the initial branching point. So if we did a pre-lookup on because every scene wouldn't need it, just 2D to texture. That might be the highest point that we'd be able to kind of take that. mean, it's not strictly these things that are causing the slow times. Actually, now would be a good time to consider a flame graph. Also a good time to consider feeding my dog and fueling up some foods. Looks like viewership is pretty much gone, so I think I'll call it a day myself. Thanks for joining in. Until next time.